Last episode, we talked about the 5 things I love about the car industry. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the 5 things I hate about the car industry. Why would I do that? Because it gives perspective on the things that we can improve upon. If you don't know what's broken, you can't fix it. So stay tuned and we'll talk about it in this episode of Down Payment.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back. So in the last episode, we talked about the 5 things I absolutely love about the car industry. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about the 5 things that I don't like about this industry. With the mindset of these are all problems that we can creatively fix and deal with, because the things that I hate about the car industry, very likely to be problems that you're facing and you hate about the car industry as well. So we're going to start with number 5, and that is our margins. I call it the margin myth. People think that in automotive, we have these massive margins. And maybe there are some dealers that are just enjoying massive margins and whatnot, and that's great. Good luck to them. It's not going to last. The reality is this is a pretty tight margin industry. And it translates into a lot of different difficulties that we have in this industry, including one problem that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this episode, cash flow. But with number 5, my biggest complaint is the margin myth. Our margins are not that amazing. Now, I worked in the buy here, pay here side of the industry, and the margins in buy here, pay here are one of the most misunderstood things about the buy here, pay here segment, especially by outsiders. But even a lot of people in buy here, pay here don't exactly understand what their margins are. And we've talked about that in a prior episode. But we don't have these amazing margins, and so there isn't the negotiation room that customers think that we have. And it does drive a lot of the strategic business decisions that we have to make with our dealerships. The margins are just not huge. They're not that incredible. And it really is one of the things that drives a lot of challenge. Number 4, my 4th least favorite thing about the car industry, the changing regulatory environment. Now, we all seek to follow the law. Anyone who doesn't want to follow the law doesn't belong in this industry. But the changing regulatory environment, driven by constant change at both state and federal levels, is a big challenge for our industry. I don't know any dealer that loves working the compliance side of the business. Now, we have to. We all work the compliance side of our businesses. We're making policy changes to our practices to accommodate the regulatory change, the regulatory environment constantly changing on us. But it is not a fun part of this industry. One of the reasons that we have gone into the podcasting and training is to provide you tools to better adapt to the changing regulatory environment. But I will admit, this is a hard side of the business to love. Then number 3, my 3rd least favorite thing about the car business, the human resources drama. HR is tough in the car industry. We have a unique culture. We have a unique type of person that comes into our industry. And all of that is good, but it does come with some HR baggage. And getting HR done right in your business across the entire talent lifecycle is so important to be able to keep the HR drama to a minimum. Unfortunately, I've seen so many dealers get embroiled in terrible HR drama that hurts their sales, hurts their operations, hurts their customer service experience. And it's something that is so vital for you to get right in your dealership. You want to keep the HR drama to a minimum. You need to have a lot of HR sophistication, to be quite honest, to do well in this industry. You need to know your HR laws. You need to have your managers know your HR laws. You need to have good compliance and enforcement practices going on. You need to have a good disciplinary system. You also have to have good coaching and mentoring practices going on. You need to have talent development going on. That includes stuff like training and professional development. There is a lot to HR, and you have to do it really well to keep that HR drama to a minimum. And if you don't, the negative consequences for your business can be huge. And it can literally set you back a year or two in the growth and development of your business if you're dealing with a round of HR issues with your dealership. So really focus on HR, really work on trying to get your HR processes done really well across that entire talent life cycle, starting with recruiting and onboarding and everything that follows after that. My second least favorite thing about this industry, difficult to recon cars. Starting off with, I'm looking at you, cars with CVTs that don't last to 120,000 miles or even 100,000 miles, or in a few cases, 85,000 miles. That's ridiculous. The difficult to recon cars, unfortunately, are one of the biggest developing or growing problems with the independent used car industry. Our ability to survive as an industry is really dependent on our ability to recondition and prepare cars for a second life with another owner. And unfortunately, a lot of developments in the new car industry and what manufacturers are building in and how they're building these cars and the technologies involved aren't great for our industry. They are difficult to repair, sometimes impossible to repair. Often they are very technology intensive. And the technology, unfortunately, is now sometimes very brittle. Anything with a giant lithium-ion battery, big problem for our industry. Anything with a ton of complicated, tough to troubleshoot electronics, problem for our industry. Anything that can only be serviced by the OEM franchise, manufacturer, dealers, service department, difficult issue for our industry. Anything that gets a ton of recalls, problem for our industry. And then CVTs and cars that just aren't built to have lifespans like we've been used to from cars in the last 20 years, problem for our industry. And it's something where at the independent used car dealer level, we have to build reconditioning and service expertise to deal with these vehicles. And I think that that's going to mean specializing and developing really specialized niche expertise in a few program cars instead of trying to recondition every single car that's on the road. And so specialization, I think, is going to be the solution there. Time will tell, but it's something to be looking at with your businesses. And then my least favorite thing about this industry, cash flow. If you have tight cash flow with your dealership, especially if you're in the buy here, pay here side of the dealership, if you are on the buy here, pay here side of the industry, you really have to be careful about cash flow. Don't live with terrible cash flow. Cash flow is the biggest source of stress. It is ultimately the thing that'll take your business down. But make the big changes you need to your business to solve your cash flow issues. Don't try to tread water for an extended period of time. You need to be looking at definite solutions for your cash flow problems. And that is such a huge source of stress. It is such an unhealthy thing for both you and your dealership. Cash flow, my least favorite problem in this industry, and something that if you're having cash flow problems, react accordingly and solve the problem. Those are my 5 least favorite things about this industry. And with that, it's been another episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.